The wind moved slow across the open plain, dragging long strands of dust that shimmered like ghosts under the late afternoon sun. Out here, things didn't hurry. Not the cattle, not the clouds, not even trouble usually, but today something was different. Something tense, stretched tight, like the last second before a match is struck, and standing in the middle of it all was Maribel Camboots, planted in the dry earth. Jaws set, eyes narrowed at a horizon that felt closer than it should have. People in town said she was the type who lived by rules, carved them into her bones the way the canyon winds carved the rock. A rancher's daughter raised on discipline, they whispered, woman who don't step out of line. And they were right. She knew the rules of the land like scripture. She followed them, honored them, respected them. But sometimes the land didn't care about your rules. Sometimes it demanded something else. And today, it demanded it fast. Maribel adjusted the grip on her reins, her knuckles whitening. Her horse Dustwalker snorted uneasy. He knew something was wrong. Animals always sensed it first. And he wasn't the only one. From the ridge behind her came the low thunder of hoofs, steady, confident, controlled. Only one man rode like that. Only one man had a presence that arrived before he did. Callum Hayes, the rancher the whole county talked about like he was a storm, unpredictable, powerful, and always leaving something changed in his wake. She turned slightly, watching him descend the ridge with a kind of ease that only came from growing up in the saddle. Broad-shouldered, sun-hardened, jaw rough with days of stubble, he looked exactly like the stories made him out to be. A man who worked by instinct, not rules. A man who fixed problems by acting, not thinking. The exact opposite of her. He pulled up beside her, Dustwalker shifting at the presence of Callum's big bay stallion. You're late, she said, trying to hide the relief in her voice. Callum gave a small, humorless smirk. You're early, I don't like waiting and I don't like being summoned. She let out a breath, her frustration slipping through. I didn't summon you. I asked for help, same thing, he muttered, scanning the horizon with a seriousness that told her he already knew something was wrong. Seconds passed. A hawk circled overhead, its cry slicing through the hanging stillness. Finally, she said it. What had been clawing at her chest all morning. They're back. Callum's eyes sharpened, restless. She nodded. Tracks near the north fence line. Fresh, too fresh. He leaned forward in his saddle. How many? 3, maybe 4. Hard to tell with the way they were moving. He exhaled through his nose. Bold of them coming back after last time. Desperate men do bold things and stupid things. You think they're stupid enough to try again tonight. I think they're stupid enough to try right now, he said, jaw tightening. She swallowed hard. He was right. They weren't dealing with ordinary thieves. These men were different, trackless, cornered, and ready to break whatever rules kept the land peaceful. Callum looked at her then, not with impatience, not with arrogance, but with something else, something sharp, something protective. Why do you come out here alone? He asked. Because someone had to see what we're up against, and that someone couldn't wait for backup. She looked away, heat rising in her chest. Every minute mattered. Maribel, his voice dropped low and steady. You know the rule. Never confront rustlers alone. She stiffened. I didn't confront them, no, but you damn well almost did. I wasn't going to ride into their camp, but you were going to get close enough to be seen. Her silence answered for her. He rubbed his jaw. You could have gotten killed? She snapped back. I'm not helpless. I never said you were. His eyes met hers again. But being smart is different than being stubborn. The words landed harder than she expected. Her breath hitched, frustration mixing with something else, something she didn't want to name. Before she could respond, a distant crack echoed across the land. Not thunder, not a dry branch breaking. A gunshot. Both horses reared, nerves electrified. Maribel's pulse surged. That came from the north trail. Callum was already turning his horse. Then we move now. She kicked Dustwalker forward. Wait, just no waiting, Callum said, his voice like steel. Not today. They rode hard, hooves pounding the earth in a rhythm that matched her racing heartbeat. The wind tore at her hair, the sun dropping lower, shadows stretching long across the plain. Every second brought them closer to the danger or to whoever fired that shot. When they reached the crest overlooking the narrow trail, Maribel pulled her horse to a sharp halt. Her breath caught. Down below lay one of her cattle dead, its body sprawled like someone had left it in a hurry. Flies were already gathering. Callum's face went dark. They're sending a message. Her chest tightened. Why kill one cow? Why leave it here? Because they want you scared, he said. And they want you off your land. A chill ran through her, not from the wind, but from the realization settling like a stone in her stomach. They know we're here, she whispered. Yeah, Callum said quietly. They know. He scanned the tree line, muscles coiled. Stay behind me. I'm not hiding. You're not hiding. You're staying alive. That's different. She opened her mouth to argue, but then a branch snapped close to close. Callum's hand went immediately to the holster at his hip. He angled his body, shielding her without being obvious about it. Dustwalker shifted under her ears, pinned, sensing the tension pulsing through the air. Maribel felt the words rising in her throat, instinctual, urgent, unplanned. Callum, he didn't take his eyes off the trees. I know they're not running this time. No, he said. They're hunting. Her breath trembled. She felt the weight of the moment, heavy and sharp, pressing into her spine. Her mind raced through every rule she'd ever lived by. Stay calm. Stay back, assess before acting. But something in her broke through the fierce, something fierce, protective, and unyielding. Something older than rules. And before she could stop herself, the words ripped out, "Do it now." Callum didn't hesitate. He moved fast, dangerously fast, breaking every rule of caution she'd ever believed in. In one instant he slid from his horse, drawing his revolver in a fluid motion. In the next, he pushed forward into the brush, breaking cover, exposing himself, acting with a boldness that stole the breath from her lungs. "Callum," she hissed, gripping her reins. He ignored her, completely focused, silent, cutting through the trees like a shadow. She watched him disappear into the thicket, her heart pounding so hard she felt it in her throat. This wasn't the plan, this wasn't safe, this wasn't within the rules. But he had done exactly what she told him, exactly what she feared, exactly what had to be done. And in that single breathless moment, Maribel Kane realized something she would never forget. Once you give a man like Callum Hayes the command to act, you can't take it back. You can only pray it doesn't cost him everything. Maribel's breath hitched as Callum vanished into the dense brush, the trees swallowing him whole like the land itself wanted to keep him hidden. She strained to hear anything, footsteps, voices, another gunshot, but the world had gone unnervingly still. Only Dustwalker's nervous snorts broke the silence, and even those felt swallowed by the waiting quiet. She slid off her saddle with shaking hands, not from fear alone, but from the sudden weight of what she'd just done. She'd told him to act, told him to move, told him to break every rule she'd lived by. Do it now. The echo of her own words haunted her like a decision she couldn't undo. Was it instinct or recklessness? She wasn't sure anymore. But she did know one thing. She couldn't sit still. Her boots hit the ground, the dust puffing up around her ankles. She drew a slow breath, steadying herself the way her father had taught her years ago when he said courage didn't come from the absence of fear, it came from walking forward anyway. She followed the path Callum had taken, quieter than she'd expected herself to be. The trees thickened, shadows overlapping until the late daylight faded into muted gold and broken darkness. Every branch she brushed against felt like it was warning her. Every rustle seemed like it belonged to something watching. And then she heard it, Callum's voice, low and controlled. Somewhere ahead. Kamau, her pulse surged. She pushed forward, branches tugging at her shirt. She reached a small clearing just in time to see Callum standing with his revolver raised, his body tense, jaw tight. His eyes were locked onto a figure partially hidden behind a split-seater trunk. A man, young, maybe 20, hands trembling as he held a rifle that was far too big for him. His eyes were wide, desperate, terrified. Callum didn't move. "Drop it." The young man shook his head violently. I can't. They'll kill me." "No one's killing anybody today," Callum said, voice even. "But you're gonna put that gun down." The boy's breath came fast, uneven. "You don't understand." Callum took a slow step forward. The boy flinched. Don't come any closer." Maribel stepped into the clearing before she even realized what she was doing. "He's not going to hurt you." Both men turned toward her, Callum with surprise flickering in his eyes, the boy with something between terror and relief. "You shouldn't be here," Callum said quietly, but she ignored him, focusing on the trembling young man whose fear felt too raw to be faked. She took a single step forward, hands open. "What's your name?" The boy swallowed hard. "Evan." "How long have you been with them?" "Evan," she asked gently. His eyes darted around, as if expecting someone to leap from the shadows. "Too long. They forced me." Callum raised an eyebrow. "Rustlers forcing someone. That's new." "It happens," Maribel murmured, studying the boy's face. "What did they tell you to do?" Evan hesitated, then whispered, "Watch for you." "Just watch?" Callum asked. "They said if you came, to slow you down." Maribel exchanged a glance with Callum, her stomach tightening. "Slow us down for what?" Evan's breath shuddered. "They're moving the cattle." All of them. Her blood ran cold. All they were waiting for sundown. Callum cursed under his breath. "Smart. Darkness makes it easy to cover tracks, not smart," Evan said, shaking harder now. "Desperate. They're planning to leave the state tonight. They said anyone who gets in the way." His voice cracked. "They said they ain't leaving witnesses." Maribel's heart hammered. Callum's jaw flexed. He lowered his revolver slightly. "Evan, listen to me. Are they close?" The boy nodded quickly. "Just north of here, near the dry creek bed. They're hiding the herd until the light dies." Callum let out a slow breath, the kind that meant he was turning over a dozen plans in his head at once. Then he looked at Maribel, not with anger, not with frustration, but with something heavier. "This just became worse than we thought." She swallowed. "We have to stop them." "We do," he agreed. "But we're outnumbered, outpositioned, and losing daylight." Maribel stepped closer to Evan. "Can you show us where they are?" Fear burst across his face. "No. If they find me, they won't," Callum said firmly. "I'll make damn sure of that." But the boy only trembled harder. Maribel softened her voice. "Evan, look at me." Slowly he did. "You're here because you didn't want to be like them, because you wanted a way out. This is your chance. You help us stop them, and I swear to you we won't let them touch you." Evan stared at her, frozen between fear and courage. Then, with a shaky breath, he nodded. "I'll show you." Callum gave Maribel a long, unreadable look, one that said more than words ever could. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was fear for her. Maybe both. They moved quickly, staying low, Evan leading them through winding brush and narrow gaps in the rock. Maribel kept close behind him, Callum trailing silently like a shadow. The closer they came to the creek bed, the thicker the anxiety became, like the air itself was choking on anticipation. When they reached a vantage point overlooking the shallow ravine, Maribel's breath caught. There they were. 3 men, hard-looking, armed, mean in the way men get when the world has taken too much from them and they decided to take something back, no matter who gets hurt. They were moving her cattle, her family's legacy, into a tighter pen of makeshift fencing, preparing them for a night escape. And then she saw him, Cole Maddox, the rustler leader. The man who had been a thorn in the side of every rancher within 3 counties. Broad, scarred, with a crooked grin that looked carved by hatred itself. Callum whispered, "Well, damn." Maribel felt something cold settle inside her chest. "We're too late. They've already corralled them." "We're not too late," Callum muttered, his eyes narrowing, "just late enough to make this complicated." Evan crouched low behind them, trembling. "I told you they won't stop. They said they're not leaving without the cattle." Callum's jaw tightened. "And we're not letting them leave with them." But Maribel felt the weight of reality pressing hard. "There's 3 of them, armed, and they know this land too." Callum turned to her. His voice was calm, but there was fire under the surface. "Maribel, this is your land, your herd, your family's legacy. You tell me what you want to do." Her throat tightened. She looked down at the rustlers, at the cattle being pushed like they meant nothing, and something inside her snapped in a quiet, steady way. She met Callum's eyes. "We stop them." A slow, dangerous smile tugged at his mouth. "Then we do it your way," Evan whispered fearfully. "They'll shoot you if you go down there." Callum cracked his neck. "They'll try." Maribel's heartbeat thundered in her chest. The sun was sinking. The shadows were long. The rustlers were ready. And Callum Hayes, the man who broke every rule he touched, was waiting for her command. For the second time that day, the land stood breathless, waiting for her to say the words, waiting for her to choose the path, waiting for her to change everything. The sun was nearly gone, slipping behind the ridge like it was afraid to witness what was about to happen. Shadows thickened, the earth darkening into deep copper and violet hues. Every sound felt sharper, every breath louder. Maribel stared down into the ravine at the rustlers corralling her cattle as if they owned them, as if her family's brand meant nothing. Her fingers clenched into fists, nails digging into her palms. Callum watched her, quiet, steady, unreadable. He wasn't pushing her. He wasn't leading her. He was waiting for her to decide how far she was willing to go. Finally, she inhaled slowly, the breath trembling at first, then solidifying into something fierce. She whispered, "Callum, do it." He nodded once, not dramatic, not heroic, just sure, like he'd been waiting for that command since the moment they met. He rose from the cover of the brush, rolling his shoulders as if preparing for a fight his body already knew too well. Evan grabbed his arm. "Don't," the boy whispered urgently. "You'll be walking right into them." Callum gently freed himself. "No, son. I'll be walking straight through them." And then he stepped forward. Maribel's breath lodged in her throat as he descended the slope, not hiding, not sneaking, walking. His boots didn't falter once. His silhouette didn't falter once. His silhouette grew clearer to the men below, their heads snapping toward him like rattlesnakes, sensing movement. Cole Maddox's voice cut through the ravine. Well, he drawled, "if it ain't the stray ranch hand." Callum stopped about 10 yards away, close enough to be a threat, far enough to dodge a bullet. "Evening, Maddox," he said. "You took the wrong cattle." Cole laughed, a deep, ugly sound. "I thought they looked just right." Callum's expression didn't change. "You're not leaving with them." The 3 rustlers shifted, hands hovering near their guns. Cole cocked his head, amused. "You're brave, Hayes." "Brave or stupid?" Callum shrugged. "Why not both?" Maribel watched from above, heart pounding so hard it felt like it would shake the trees. She wanted to shout, wanted to run down there, wanted to stop him, but she stayed still because if she moved now, everything they'd worked for would fall apart. Below, Cole spat onto the dust. "I know how this goes. You try something heroic. I put you in the ground. Then I take the cattle anyway." "You won't," Callum said evenly. "Not today." "And who's gonna stop me?" Cole sneered. "You know," Callum said softly. Cole's smirk faltered, and Maribel stepped into view. The men's faces shifted, surprise, annoyance, calculation. She moved slowly, deliberately, descending the slope with the same stubborn resolve her father used to walk the land with. Her boots crunched softly against the dirt as she came to stand beside Callum. Cole eyed her like he was measuring the weight of her soul. "Little ranch princess," he said. "Thought you'd stay out of men's business." Maribel's voice didn't waver. "These cattle are mine. You're done here." Cole's smile twisted. "I'm afraid we ain't done till I say." A gunshot cracked through the ravine. Maribel flinched, but it hadn't come from the rustlers. Callum had fired into the dirt, the bullet tearing a violent line between Cole's boots. Cole froze. Callum didn't raise his voice. "Next one doesn't hit dirt." The rustlers' hands twitched near their guns, but none of them drew. Not yet. No one wanted to be the first. Maribel stepped forward just a hair, just enough to show she wasn't hiding behind Callum. "Let me be clear," she said, staring straight at Cole. "You're not leaving with anything that belongs to this ranch. Not a steer, not a calf, not a bolt from my fences. Not with Callum here." Not with me here. Cole stared at her for a long, simmering moment. Then he chuckled a low, dangerous sound. You two don't understand, he said quietly. This isn't a negotiation. Callum's jaw tightened. Then what is it? Cole's eyes hardened. It's survival. And then everything happened at once. One of the men reached for his gun. Callum moved first, firing so fast the shot barely registered before the rustler's weapon flew from his hand, spinning into the dirt. The second rustler lunged for cover, raising his rifle. Maribel reacted not with panic, but with a clarity she didn't know she had. She grabbed Callum's sleeve and yanked him sideways as a rifle shot cracked and shattered a piece of rock behind them, spraying dust. Callum rolled, came up on one knee, and fired again, pinning the man down behind a fallen log. Cole Maddox drew his revolver. The world narrowed. Maribel saw him aim not at Callum, at her time slowed. She didn't scream, didn't move. She simply watched the barrel rise toward her chest, feeling the world stretched thin and sharp. Callum saw it too, and he didn't hesitate. He threw himself between her and Cole just as the gun fired. The blast echoed off the ravine walls like thunder. Callum staggered but didn't fall. He looked down. The bullet had torn through the leather strap of his holster, shredding it mere inches from hitting him. Cole's face twisted with frustration. Lucky shot, he spat. Callum raised his gun. No, he said. Right shot. He fired. The bullet struck the rock near Cole's foot, ricocheting just enough to knock Cole off balance. Cole stumbled, dropping to one knee. The remaining rustlers scrambled for cover, their earlier confidence gone. Evan's voice echoed from above, trembling but loud. Put the guns down. Just stop. For a moment, just a moment, everything froze. Then Cole looked up, saw not fear in Maribel's eyes but resolve, and something inside him cracked. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was strategy. Maybe it was the dawning realization that he'd lost control. Slowly, Cole raised his hands. His men followed, defeated, rattled, breathing hard. Callum didn't move until their weapons were tossed toward the ground. Only then did he step forward, keeping his revolver trained on them. Maribel released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Evan slid down the hill, wide-eyed, terrified, but relieved. You did it, he stammered. No, Maribel said softly. We did. Cole glared up at her. You think this changes anything? Maribel met his gaze without flinching. It changes everything. Callum bound their hands with rope while Maribel retrieved their weapons. The cattle stirred nervously, but the danger had passed. For now, when it was done, Callum finally straightened and looked at her. Really looked at her. You broke every rule you live by today, he said quietly. So did you, she replied. His eyes softened. You sure you don't regret it? She shook her head once. Not one bit. The last light faded from the sky as they stood among the quiet cattle. The rustlers tied, the land settling into dusk. Maribel exhaled, knowing she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. But for the first time in a long time, she felt free.